I discovered that my wife, the one who was my whole world, my safe place, had been cheating on me for 7 long months. The pain wasn't just a shock, it was a raging storm that wiped away every shard of trust, every ounce of love, every vision of the future we once dreamed of. Each day became a battlefield between fiery anger and crushing exhaustion, between cold resignation and the desperate hope to forgive. I shut down, withdrew from our marriage silently, avoiding confrontation, becoming a ghost in my own home. Then, out of the darkness, a flicker of hope appeared, Monica, an old flame from years ago, who reignited feelings I thought were dead. With her, I found a fragile light that pushed me to face the truth, face my wife, and face the broken pieces of my life. What happened next wasn't the promise of healing. It was a shattering confrontation filled with tears, desperate pleas, and the cold, final words of a man whose love had died. This journey, the one I never wanted to take, is one of pain and raw honesty, forcing me to rebuild from a place I never imagined I'd be. Before we dive into this, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? I want to hear from you. Now, settle in, because this is my story, a story of love, betrayal, heartbreak, and the strength it takes to move forward. There's a moment when your entire world falls apart, not with a bang, but with a quiet, suffocating weight that presses down on your chest until you can hardly breathe. That moment came for me unexpectedly, wrapped in silence and betrayal. I found out my wife had been cheating on me for 7 months. 7 months of secrets, lies, stolen moments hidden behind the walls of the home we once built together. It wasn't a dramatic confrontation. No shouts, no explosive fights. Just the subtle but unmistakable evidence that shattered everything, messages I wasn't meant to see, calls she quickly ended when I walked into the room, the distance in her eyes that suddenly made sense. The nights I spent replaying our memories, wondering where I'd missed the signs, doubting myself, feeling like I was unraveling thread by thread. What hurt the most wasn't just the act itself, but the quiet acceptance I sensed from her. As if she had already given up on us long before I even knew. Yet, what really tore me apart was knowing our children were caught in this storm, their innocent laughter oblivious to the fractures beneath the surface, while I carried this unbearable secret like a heavy chain around my heart. During those bleak nights, my mind was a battlefield. Rage coursed through me like wildfire, leaving ashes of despair in its wake. How dare she do this to us? To our family? But intertwined with that fury was a raw, aching sadness that threatened to swallow me whole. I was drowning in a sea of confusion, love and hate crashing against each other like waves in a relentless storm. I became a shadow in my own house, physically present but emotionally gone. I stopped sharing meals with her, stopped answering her eyes when she looked my way. I kept my distance even from our kids, afraid that my torment would spill over and poison their world. Friends reached out. Mark, my oldest friend since college, called frequently, trying to anchor me back to reality. His voice was one of the few things that kept me tethered when I wanted nothing more than to disappear completely. Mark was my sounding board and my lifeline. On one particularly dark night, I remember telling him through choked tears, "How do you rebuild when the foundation is gone? When the person you trusted most turns out to be a stranger with a secret life?" His answer was simple but piercing. "You don't rebuild by forgetting. You rebuild by facing the truth, no matter how painful." Facing that truth meant confronting the unbearable, that the woman I thought shared my dreams, my fears, my future, was living another life, one I wasn't even invited to understand. And yet, even as I wallowed in anger and sorrow, a small part of me still searched for meaning, for some kind of explanation that could make sense of this chaos. Then there was the crushing weight of responsibility, the kids. Our children, whose bright eyes looked to me for safety and love, while unknowingly standing in the middle of a crumbling battlefield. I spent countless hours trying to shield them from the fallout, but even I could see the confusion and pain flickering across their faces. Their world had shifted, just like mine, and I knew I had to be the one strong enough to hold it together. It was a lonely road. Alone in my thoughts, I wrestled with whether to confront her, or to simply walk away. The silence between us became louder each day. Our home felt alien. Memories that once brought joy now stabbed like knives, dinners filled with laughter replaced by quiet avoidance, the soft touches and whispered promises replaced by cold shoulders and empty rooms. But amid the wreckage, a sliver of hope emerged, an unexpected encounter that would challenge everything I thought I wanted, and force me to confront not only my broken marriage but also what I truly needed to heal. There comes a time when the unbearable weight of betrayal no longer allows you to stand still. When the hurt, the broken promises, and the shattered trust coalesce into a single, clear truth, the marriage you once believed in is no longer yours to save. That moment arrived in the cold silence of a house that felt more like a battlefield than a home. After months of wrestling with anger, sorrow, and disbelief, I reached a crossroads. Keep pretending, keep hoping, or finally make the decision to let go and reclaim my life. I chose the hard path, divorce. But that choice was never simple. It came layered with pain, guilt, fear, and a host of questions about the future, questions that had no easy answers. The first step was practical, finding a lawyer, understanding the legalities, and slowly pulling apart the threads of a shared life. But legal papers weren't the hardest thing to face. It was telling my children. Their innocent eyes, their trusting hearts, how do you explain to them that the family they cherish is breaking apart? How do you comfort them when your own heart is in shards? I remember one evening in particular, sitting down with them after dinner. Their voices trembled as they quietly asked, "Are Mom and Dad going to be okay?" I wanted so badly to say yes. But instead, I had to be honest without shattering their world further. Sometimes, grown-ups can't stay together, but Mommy and Daddy both love you very much and will always be here for you. Those words felt heavy, like a double-edged sword, a promise and a farewell wrapped in one. Amid this emotional chaos, old friends and family became both lifelines and sources of pressure. My sister, Emily, was a constant presence, offering comfort, tough love, and occasional distractions. She pushed me to prioritize my well-being, reminding me, "You can't pour from an empty cup." But there were also voices telling me to try harder or give her a second chance. Those words echoed painfully, a reminder that not everyone understood the depth of the wound or the darkness it had cast over my soul. In the weeks that followed, I consciously checked out of the marriage I once fought for. I stopped initiating conversations, avoided shared spaces, and began preparing for the life I would lead alone. The silence between us was deafening, filled with unspoken accusations, regret, and a mutual exhaustion neither of us could fix. Yet inside, a battle raged. Part of me clung desperately to the hope that something could still be salvaged, that maybe the woman I loved before the betrayal could be found again. But every time I reached for that hope, it slipped through my fingers like smoke, replaced by the stark reality of pain, broken trust, and the impossibility of truly going back. Preparing for divorce wasn't just about ending a chapter, it was about reshaping my identity. Who am I without this marriage? Without her? The questions haunted my thoughts late into the night. But amid the uncertainty, I felt a flicker of something new. A tiny ember of freedom and self-discovery that whispered, "This is your chance. It won't be easy, but you can rebuild." And while I took these steps toward separation, a surprising and complicated thread began to weave into my story, the memory, and eventually the presence, of Monica. She emerged not just as a reminder of the past, but as a symbol of possibility. But I was wary, the line between healing and running, hope and escape, was razor-thin. Still, before I could explore that fragile flicker of light, there was one more confrontation ahead, a final reckoning with the woman who had broken our family and the intense emotions yet to be faced. In the midst of the darkest chapters of my life, when betrayal and bitterness wrapped tightly around my heart, fate had a strange way of stirring the embers that I thought were long dead. Monica. Her name lingered in the back of my mind like a half-forgotten melody, a memory from a time when life seemed simpler, and love felt untarnished by deceit. We had known each other years ago, back before my marriage, before the kind of pain I was now trapped in. There was always an unspoken chemistry between us, a tension charged with what-ifs and might-have-beens. But life took us on separate paths, and we never crossed that invisible line. Monica moved away, and with her departure, that flicker of possibility dimmed into silence. Then, unexpectedly, she reappeared. It was like the universe conspired to put her in my path at exactly the moment when my spirit hung precariously between hopelessness and the desperate need for something real. Our eyes met, and words flowed effortlessly, more than I remembered. She wasn't just a reminder of the past, she was a reflection of who I once was and who I might become again. But this wasn't a simple story of two people reconnecting. Monica listened intently when I told her about everything, the betrayal, the divorce preparations, the shattered trust. She didn't judge. Instead, she respected my boundaries and the painful process I was navigating. She told me she had never married, and that she, too, had carried scars of loss and loneliness. Her fiancé died unexpectedly years before, leaving her with wounds that still ached. That shared vulnerability sparked something fragile yet profound. For the first time in months, I felt drawn out of the darkness, not toward escape, but toward hope. But along with this flicker of light came the weight of uncertainty. Could I open myself to love again when my heart was barely holding together? Was it fair to Monica, to myself, to begin something new while still buried in the wreckage of the past? My inner world became a battleground of conflicting voices. The part of me that longed for connection, tenderness, and understanding warred with the part that screamed caution, fear of repeating mistakes, of inviting more pain, of unresolved wounds sabotaging any chance at happiness. What if I was just chasing an illusion to numb the ache of betrayal? In this turmoil, Monica became a quiet confidant. Our conversations stretched long into the night, blurring lines between friendship and something more. We spoke frankly about the stigma of rebound relationships, about the judgment from others who might see us as rushing or reckless. Monica understood my desire to wait until the divorce was official, a boundary we both firmly agreed on, to protect ourselves and others. As I kept my distance from my failing marriage, Monica was a steady presence, patient, compassionate, encouraging me to take the time I needed to heal fully before stepping into a new chapter. Yet, even with caution as my guide, my heart was pulling me toward a future I wasn't sure I deserved, or that was truly ready. Through her, I glimpsed not just a new relationship but a chance to rediscover the man I once was, the man who believed in love, in second chances, in the possibility of happiness beyond betrayal. But could I embrace that chance without betraying myself? Without betraying the love that once was? As these questions churned inside me, life kept moving forward. Divorce papers sat unopened on the table at home, the silence between my wife and me growing heavier. Monica's voice on the other end of the line was a soft reminder that healing was not linear, and sometimes, the hardest part was simply allowing oneself to hope again. The moment finally came, the one I had delayed and dreaded for months, sitting across from the woman who had shattered not only my heart but our entire family. Our home, once filled with laughter and quiet reassurance, felt heavy with silence and unspoken pain. The air was thick with anticipation, fear, and a fragile thread of unresolved tension that threatened to snap. I remember how she looked when she walked into the room, eyes red and glassy, cheeks swollen, hair disheveled, a fragile shell of the person I once knew. The weight of betrayal was crushing her now, not with the youthful arrogance or denial I had once imagined, but with the raw, agonizing reality of having broken the very thing she cherished. For a moment, I saw not my wife, but a person drowning in regret and shame, and it stirred something complicated inside me. I took a deep breath and spoke with a voice steadier than I felt. We need to talk. I know everything. I've known for 7 months. My words hung in the air like a storm cloud ready to burst. She didn't respond at first, just collapsed into tears, not the kind of polite, manufactured tears, but those uncontrollable sobs that shake your very core, that spill out from the deepest wells of torment. I could hear the rawness in her cries, desperation, guilt, heartbreak. It wasn't an act. It was pain, real and devastating. She tried to explain, stumbling over her words, trying to piece together excuses that only revealed more of her confusion. It didn't mean anything. I never meant to hurt you. We can fix this, if we try counseling. Her voice broke with every sentence, the sorrow weaving through her pleas. But the truth was clear in her eyes. She was grasping for hope, for a lifeline that I was no longer willing to throw. I listened, torn between anger and pity. Part of me wanted to scream, to confront all the lies and betrayal. But a deeper part of me, wounded and exhausted, knew this conversation wasn't about blame anymore. It was the painful acknowledgement that what we had was gone. Broken beyond repair. Her sister stood nearby, a silent sentinel, her own tears tracing down her face. I later learned she had warned my wife of this inevitable reckoning, how her own life had been torn apart by similar choices. The circle of pain was wider than I realized. I asked the questions that burned in my mind, questions I never expected to be answered. Why? How could you do this to us, to me, to the kids? What was going on inside your head when you made that choice? She faltered, unable to give a clear answer. I don't know. I guess I felt lost. I was selfish. I thought it wouldn't hurt anyone. Her words were raw confessions, but none could undo the damage. In the midst of her tearful breakdown, I shared the harshest truth I could muster. There is no fixing this now. The trust is gone. Our family is broken. My voice cracked, revealing the depth of my pain. She sobbed harder, pleading for a second chance, promising to confess to the other woman's wife, to face every consequence, but I felt numb. The damage had been done long before these words. We stayed for hours in that room, time stretching as emotions crashed like waves between us. Exhausted, I finally broke the silence with a reluctant suggestion. Maybe, for the kids, we try family therapy. But for us, there's nothing left. The days after were a strange blur. The rawness of that meeting lingered in my mind, in every corner of our house. She told everyone, the other woman's wife, friends, family, about the affair. The fallout rippled through our shared worlds. Yet, despite her openness, I felt a cold wall rise inside me, built from betrayal, sorrow, and loss. I hated her for what she'd done, but still held on to the fragile memories of who we once were. And in that hatred and heartbreak, I understood that forgiveness, if it ever came, would not be for her. It would be for me. When everything in the world seemed to be falling apart, it was the faces of my children that stayed with me, clear, innocent, and fragile amid the wreckage of our broken family. Their laughter, once the melody of my life, now echoed with an undertone of confusion and pain that no adult should ever have to witness in their own home. In the wake of betrayal, my heartbreak felt like a storm that threatened to drown them too. It was a cruel paradox. I was shattered, but I had to be their fortress. Their protector. The moment I sat down with them to explain what was happening was one of the hardest I've ever faced. My voice cracked as I tried to find words gentle enough to shield them, yet honest enough that they wouldn't grow fearful of the shadows lurking beneath our once happy family. Sometimes, I told them, grown-ups can't live together anymore, but Mommy and Daddy both love you, always and forever. Their eyes shone with unspoken questions. How could I reassure children who sensed a future now uncertain? How could I keep their world safe when mine was crumbling? In those days, I realized that love alone wasn't enough. I needed help, not just for them, but for myself. Our therapist, Sarah, became a beacon in that fog. With her, we began untangling a knot of emotions that even words struggled to unravel: anger, confusion, abandonment, and hope. Sarah's calm, steady presence gave my children space to voice fears they never dared share with me, and it gave me tools to listen, really listen. Outside the therapy room, my sister Emily stepped into a more vital role, not just as family, but as a guardian. She threw herself into helping with school runs, homework, and bedtime stories, making sure my children never felt alone. Her unwavering support was a reminder that even in the darkest times, love found a way to surround us. I also made it a point to speak with their teachers and coaches, a small but crucial network of adults who could spot changes in behavior or mood and provide an extra layer of support. Educators like Mrs. Hernandez and Coach Miller became trusted allies. Their compassion reassured me that my children's world extended beyond the broken walls of our home. Yet, despite every effort, the internal conflict I carried was raw. Every time I saw a flicker of sadness in my child's eyes, my heart cracked a little more. I wrestled with guilt. Could I have done more? Was this rupture our fault? Could their innocence survive this storm without scars? And then there were moments of stubborn love shining through this darkness, small smiles after therapy, laughter echoing during family game nights, the warmth of hugs that reminded me why the fight mattered. Those moments carved paths out of the chaos, glimmers of light showing that healing was possible. Still, the question lingered: how do I move forward with an open heart toward my own future without fracturing the fragile healing taking place for my children? Balancing their needs and my desires felt like walking a tightrope stretched over an abyss. As I watched them sleep one night, safe for the moment from the confusion and pain, I made a silent vow. No matter how broken things get, they would never feel abandoned. I would carry this pain alone, so it wouldn't spill onto their shoulders. But this journey of healing was far from over. There were still conversations to be had, boundaries to be drawn, and a new kind of love to be nurtured, not just for my children, but for myself. In the aftermath of betrayal and the harrowing ordeal of divorce, I found myself standing at a crossroads. Not just between past and future, but between despair and hope. The pain was still raw, a persistent ache that lingered in every corner of my life. But slowly, ever so slowly, a new chapter began to write itself, not one without scars, but one filled with the courage to heal and rebuild. The early days after the divorce were the hardest. I was plunged into loneliness that felt suffocating, a silence so loud it echoed with memories of what once was. Every familiar place, every routine carried the ghost of her presence, and with it, the sting of loss. Nights were the most brutal. I found myself wrestling with the relentless question: who am I without her? It felt like losing a part of myself, the man I thought I was, defined by a love now shattered. Yet amid the darkness, small acts of self-care became my lifeline. Friends like Mark and my sister Emily, steadfast anchors in the storm, reminded me that healing was a process, not a destination. Mark's texts, simple yet powerful, one day at a time, became my mantra. Emily's presence, whether in a shared coffee or a listening ear, wrapped me in the warmth of family that refused to let me fall apart completely. Part of rebuilding was reconnecting with the parts of myself I had neglected, the passions, the dreams, the simple joys that divorce threatened to bury. I returned to hobbies and interests that once seemed trivial but became sacred anchors. Morning runs in the quiet park, long drives with music that stirred my soul, books that offered escape and reflection. These moments of solitude were not escapes, they were steps toward rediscovery. But the emotional landscape was never smooth. There were days when bitterness surged, when the wounds of betrayal flared with fresh intensity. Forgiveness felt impossible, a mountain too steep to climb. I grappled with questions of trust. Whether I could ever allow myself to be vulnerable again, to believe in love without fear of shattering. In this battle within, I discovered a surprising truth: healing was not about forgetting or excusing the past but about reclaiming power over my own story. I realized that forgiveness, when it comes, would be a gift I give myself, a release from the chains of anger and grief that held me captive. Slowly, I opened my heart to new possibilities. Not out of desperation, but from a place of cautious hope. Monica's name lingered on my lips, no longer a forbidden whisper but a gentle invitation to imagine a future where trust could be rebuilt from honesty and respect. Yet even then, boundaries remained sacred. I walked carefully, mindful of the fragile balance between moving on and honoring what had been lost. Family remained the cornerstone of my healing. My children's smiles, their resilience, and their unwavering love gave me strength in moments when my own faltered. Therapy sessions became not just a source of support but a place to forge a path forward together, acknowledging pain while nurturing hope. This journey, painful, complex, unpredictable, is still unfolding. It has taught me that loss is not the end but a transformation. That from the ashes of heartbreak, a stronger, wiser self can emerge. As I stand here today, I know there is no quick fix, no neat resolution. But there is growth, courage, and a quiet determination to live fully again. This is not just my story of pain and betrayal, it's a testament to resilience and the human spirit's capacity to heal. And if you find yourself walking a similar path, know this: you are not alone. Healing is possible, one heartbeat at a time. Thank you for following this journey with me. If you've faced something similar or have thoughts to share, please leave a comment below and let us know where you're watching from. Your story matters, and together, we can find strength. Would you like me to help draft a closing section that ties all parts together and encourages viewer reflection and engagement?